Well, good morning, everybody. We are here at KUHS Denver, streaming to you. Having a great day. And we're having a great day because it is just beautiful outside. Blue skies, mile-high blue. It's wonderful. And the temperature is not too hot, not too cold. I kind of like it that way. Today we're going to talk about a topic that needs to be spoken about often because it's about safety and it's about processes that secure environments for our children to learn. Now we're going to focus on schools, but learning happens almost anywhere. A ball field, playgrounds, at home. But the central focus for most kids is in the classroom. A majority of kids, it's in the public school classroom. So when I talk today about the classroom, there may be a feeling of sadness, but I also want to talk about the optimistic side of things, because that's the reality of the world. It's not just good or bad, plus or minus. It's about making sure that we recognize and acknowledge both states of energy and deal with it and manage it in a way that the outcomes are as close to what we prescribe them to be as possible. So welcome. This is 360 Performance. I'm Dr. Whiteman, or Coach to many. We're going to talk about from the mouths of babes. And some of them are speaking to us from another place in the universe and not physically present. So let's start off like we do every week with a mindset moment. At the risk of being self-ingratiating, promoting myself, which is difficult for me to do, I have a difficult time doing that. But be that as it may, here's what I have to say in the mindset moment quote for this week. There is no room for error when it comes to the safety of children. Let everyone know what you expect. There is no room for error. We have to be present, both physically present, mindfully present, so that the environments we create when we leave them are secure and protecting those who we want to inherit what we've created for them. Because that's it. Look at my grandkids in the big part of their life where they're the most productive. I won't be around. So I'm hoping that what I'm leaving behind is a foundation of support and excellence that they can leverage and build better. So there is no room for error when it comes to the safety of children. So our theme for today is from the mouths of babes. The kids are talking to us. They talk to us all the time. Sometimes when we don't want them to, but they still are talking to us. And in this case, they talk to us through their efforts during crisis, their energy and emotion in dealing with that crisis, but also their actions and their words are representative of the failures that we as adults have provided them. So we need to create safe environments and ask questions about our kids' safety in those environments so that we can control those elements that put them at risk, like guns. Because the learning that children will do in these spaces, in those environments that we designate as their classrooms, will be challenged when the elements that we're not controlling come into those spaces. We'll talk about that and those spaces, those classrooms, those schools, and what we need to do to take a really close, hard look at what's going on. So let me give you a couple of statistics. In 2022, we have had already 27 gun-related fatalities for kids. 19 of them happened just last week in Uvalde at Robb Elementary School. 19 of the 27 so far in the 6th month of the year. That's how many kids have lost their lives due to gun violence. What's interesting to me is it's violence that the kids don't bring upon themselves. And I'll be a little bit flip in this comment. You know, kids have fights on the playground. Kids tussle. High school kids get into fights during football games, basketball, whatever. They compete. But those are resolved interactions that don't result in the death of the kid. And in most cases, I won't say all, in most cases of those examples, there's not a weapon to be found that's going to kill them as brutally and as quickly as a gun will. Now, don't misinterpret my remarks as being anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment. I'm not even going to go into those political posturings that many people are doing across the country. We have lots of evidence to provide us with strategies and methods that will solve problems that do not put kids in harm's way, that do not infringe upon the rights that our forefathers have created for us and that we are entitled to manage and oversee. So the arguments that my rights are being taken away from me, my freedoms, my Second Amendment, no, they're not absolute. So we take a look at 3 components of today's discussion. One is the schools themselves. As I said, there were, well, this statistic has been updated. It's 27 students resulted in gun fatalities in 2022. 19 of them are in Texas as of the last few days. The total death toll was 21. 2 of those were teachers. Let me share a story about the students at Robb Elementary School and the bravery of one 10-year-old little girl, a 4th grader, who, for whatever reason, whatever in her past, in her short life, gave her the wherewithal, the thought to do this and save her own life. She had dialed 911, as many of the kids did that were captured in those 2 classrooms down in Uvalde at Robb Elementary School. But a fellow student next to her that had already been shot, she took blood from that student and put it on her face and lied quietly to mimic that she had been shot too, more than likely saving her own life. That's bravery. That's courage. Why do we have to test their courage in that environment? I'm grateful that she had the courage to do that in those circumstances. For whatever reason, for whatever historical frame of reference this young girl had to give her that. But does she have to be put in that situation? The other piece of this is about the guns themselves. Lots of arguments about gun safety, gun regulation, application processes, many layers to the United States of America's position on guns. But just let me give you some facts here. In less than 2 days, the gunman who shot these kids and those teachers fatally bought 2 AR-15s 1 day after his 18th birthday, which made him legal to purchase weapons. Well, AR-15s, not necessarily handguns. In the state of Texas, I'll say certain types, because I don't have all the facts in front of me. I can't say all handguns. But for certain types of handguns, he cannot buy handguns until he's 21. In addition to that, he purchased more than 350 rounds of ammunition. Now, a reasonable gun shop owner, somebody comes in, they have to present an ID, proof of age, whatever the process is for the application or the documents to purchase the gun. And you see that it's 2 AR-15s. That means you went in, got one, came back, and to the same place. don't you think the reasonable shop owner, clerk at the counter, would ask some questions? And then when they buy in excess of 350 rounds of ammunition, wouldn't you think, oh, you know what? Why is this kid doing this? I mean, even if the response was, yeah, you know, I'm just going to go out and do some massive target practice. Just turned 18. I'd like to be able to use my rifles. That's what I want to do. But with that, you get an answer from this kid. And then maybe based on the answer and the actual actions the kid took in purchasing the weapon and the ammunition, you might make a phone call and say, hey, you know, Mr. Sheriff, Ms. Sheriff, Chief of Police, I just had this happen at my store. Just doesn't seem quite reasonable to me. And I have the person's name, I have their address, at least according to what it was filled out, and their phone number. What do you think? Seems reasonable to me. I would have a question, and I'm not questioning it based on a anti-gun mentality or mindset. I'm questioning it as just what's reasonable for the use and application of that weapon. That's what I would be having rolling through my head. And as I say that, I'm going, how safe then are my children? And wherever they're at, in the buildings that they're at, are they protected? Because the third component of our discussion today is about the environments, the school that they're in. We now know that the door that the gunman entered into was unlocked. Now, the story based on video shows that someone exited that door to go to their car in the parking lot and then come back in the building. But then when fully examined, the door was unlocked. That compounded, and it was a back door. It was not the front main door of the school. That's concerning, because the resource officer that was assigned to this building was not there. He was not present. I'm sorry, I don't know if it was a he or a she. They were not present in the building. They had another assignment. So that means during school hours, that resource officer wasn't primarily assigned for the entire day to that building. It's very interesting. Now, for those of you who can see me on video, I'm going to put on my cool glasses, because I left my reading glasses back at my office. So I'm going to give you some statistics, some more statistics. Now that you've got the three components. We're talking about the students in the school. We're talking about the purchase of weapons, the methods and processes of that, and then the building the kids are in, the environment, the schoolroom, the classrooms the kids are in. Those are the three slices of the pie that need to be examined as we look at protecting our children in schools. Because there is a lot more to discover. Do you realize there are 400 million guns in the hands of U.S. citizens since, just right now? But since 2019 to the mid-2021, over 7 million guns were sold, 7.5 million guns to be precise, were sold to U.S. citizens who had never owned a gun before. When people are polled, now this is information brought forward by Scientific America, an independent scientific journal. So I trust their methods, that they're not biased, they're not shifting their reporting based on some predisposed ideology and political twist. The next statistic, 88% of those gun owners, of all gun owners, the reason they bought the gun was to protect their home. 88% of them. Of the 7.5 million new gun owners in 2019 to 2021, they all bought the gun to protect their homes. I'm not saying they don't have the right to do that. They absolutely have the right to do that. But here's the next piece of information I want to share with you. We do not have any legislation on the books in the United States that regulates safety parameters and standards for gun owners. If you buy tobacco, there are safety standards for those packages of cigarettes. There are labels on the cigarettes warning you of the risks. There are standards of manufacturing for nicotine and other levels. Those manufacturers are liable for people that buy cigarettes and then are adversely affected. In 2008, in this country, we passed legislation that caused gun manufacturers to be liability-free. Nothing that anybody does with a gun could bring liableness behavior back to the manufacturer for the use and or abuse of that weapon. So for the 7.5 million people that bought guns for the first time with the motivation to use that weapon to protect their home, they are not subject to any proof of ownership, operation of that gun. When you drive a car, you got to pass a test to prove that you know how to do it, how to use the blinker, how to put it into park, how to turn the tires when you're on a side hill, all different kinds of things. I mean, almost since time began with driving cars. We don't have the same thing with a more active, easily accessible, and more dangerous weapon than a car. Don't have it. I think we should, especially when there's conversations about teachers being encouraged to carry weapons and have those weapons present in the classroom. A colleague of mine who lives in the Midwest said to me that there was a gunman that went into a grocery store. Now, he wasn't in the grocery store at the time. This was reported on the news, but I think it's a noteworthy story for the other side of being licensed to carry. But it also makes my point about training. A gunman came into a grocery store in the Midwest and was holding the grocery store and everybody in there at the time hostage to rob them, to rob the store. A patron of the store who was carrying their weapon with them pulled their weapon out, confronted. I don't know how confrontational this person was to the gunman, the robber, but they were close enough to be recognized by the gunman, and this person raised their weapon and said, "You need to leave," and fired off some rounds into the ceiling of the grocery store. Thankfully, it was not a two-story grocery store. Would you have known if there was anybody above you, right? And the gunman was afraid enough and left. For whatever reason, it worked out. No money was taken, no robbery, nobody was hurt, and we move on. That, to some, is evidence that license to carry, conceal and carry permits are worthwhile. But I come back to my point, and I don't know this about the person who raised their gun and took some shots off in the grocery store, but is that person trained? Do they know how to handle their weapon more than just pulling it out, pointing it to the ceiling, and taking off a couple of rounds? We have more to discover, because failure with the use of firearms doesn't look very nice. It looks like the classroom floors after a gunman shoots off rounds of an AR-15 rifle at 10-year-old fourth grade students and their teachers. Now, I don't want to get maudlin or grotesque, but I want to tell you that when you shoot anything with a high-powered automated rifle like an AR-15, the consequences of the impact are detrimental, harsh, and destructive. Now just take those adjectives and apply them to any image you can create in your mind about those rounds striking a 10-year-old. And you'll start to get an idea of what that environment looked like. and what the family, the impact on the family had when they brought their children home. Well, they didn't bring them home. They brought them to a funeral home to prepare them to be put to rest. It's not a good situation. So the three components that we have to call upon as resources, as perhaps solution sets, action steps in taking the resolutions that are created and moving them forward. And I say that with the assumption we have none, but we do. We have resolutions. I mean, literally and figuratively, we have resolutions. There are House bills presented. I'm hoping we'll move forward to the Senate. There's a lot of rhetoric flying around, but let me start with the family. You don't want to be a family member that has to face this. You want to be a family member that sees your child running to you after they climbed out of the schoolroom window to escape that environment that was now compromised by an active gunman and shooter. You want to be home with your family. Now, with that being said, the impact of events like this, and I'm going to just guess that Robb Elementary School and the trauma that they've gone through is going to be a case study for future examination to help us validate the actions we need to take as a country, as communities, to support these families and protect those kids. Because the teacher that died, one of the two teachers that died, her husband was so traumatically affected by it that he died of a heart attack, leaving the remainder of his children without parents. They have family, so there should be a support network for them. But when this pebble's dropped in the water, the ripples are huge. And too often, very powerful enough to take more lives and affect the performance of lives for many years into the future. It's not just about those who passed away and died in those classrooms. So the family is one of those pockets of resources that we'd also call upon to move it forward. As families and the kids that were influenced by the schoolroom shootings down in Florida, those kids, many of whom now have graduated, they were high school students, have graduated, have been brought into the political scene. They are perhaps lobbyists, spokespeople, supporters and reporters of the consequences. They are people who circulate surveys and petitions to get action steps from those who are leaders to complete the process and give us legislation that is effective in modifying behavior and bringing to the attention of our law enforcement communities who are those that do not need to have a gun in their hands, that do not need to have the full rights of the Constitution and the Second Amendment, because they don't know how to handle it. So when we come back to the school is also a place that needs to make sure its environment is fully closed to non-students, and that there are processes for vendors to show up delivering paper or food products, or moms and dads that need to pick up a child early for a sporting event, or coaches that need to come in. And there's badges, there's security measures, there's the resource officer that's there and can check these systems down. And the kids then are not interrupted. Look, I am, and have been for many, many years, and continue to be an instructor, an educator. But I used to be in that role as a middle school assistant dean, a teacher in the classroom, as well as an administrator at both the middle school and high school levels. I'm familiar with what's necessary for the schools to have in place. And quite honestly, firmly spoken, Money is not an excuse to not have these things. Reroute monies that need to go into these things to protect these kids, so that you have the systems in place. You have the budget to keep the resource officer there for the full day, every day. And that doors can be locked and should be locked during certain hours. But at the same time, thinking through the processes to adapt and adjust as needed. If a teacher needs to go to the parking lot to get something out of her car, she can do that because she knows the process. But the process also upholds the security of the environment, because when the security is not held up, kids are interrupted in their learning. It's bad enough that we have the routine drills that kids go through. It's no longer about weather, the drills. It's not about hurricanes and tornadoes. It's about active shooters in the neighborhood going through mock drills. That's unfortunate. But that's also about the safety of the environment. Because if we have to do those drills, there's a concern that the shooters can get in the building. And that shouldn't be the case. And the more that we have examples like Robb Elementary School, the more kids are scared to go to school. The more kids are hesitating their learning processes because they're always, figuratively speaking, looking over their shoulder, wondering about the noise that happens in the hallway because a janitor drops a bucket or something, makes a noise like it's a pop. And it's an innocent noise, perhaps, in the hallway, but the kids have heard the stories, they've heard about it. Or perhaps, God forbid, they're actually the school that had an incident happen there. We need to open up our minds and our hearts to methods and processes that are going to take strategically accurate and effective strategies forward to protect these kids in their school. The third component that's a resource for us is the community. Well, that's got a lot of slices to it. And those slices need to lay responsibility on each other. Moms and dads in the households, business owners, community leaders in local government, the police forces and the legal system, the attorneys, and then we get to the politicians that regulate and legislate, to all of the things that help to monitor the security and the maintenance of the safety of all buildings, not just schools, but all buildings, right down to the simplicity of things we take for granted, like traffic lights, monitoring that. If it's a bigger city, it could be mass transit, buses, trains, all different kinds of systems that need to be watched so that if we have, God forbid, more incidences, we're able to secure the facilities, secure the area around it, and lock it down and gain control of those violent, fatal elements that come into our community. We're not connected. Regretfully, we're not connected. All of those parts that I've mentioned are not fully connected with standards that can be regulated through accurate and effective monitoring. Every community I've ever been in, big and or small, and the ones I live in and nearby, there's no consistent pattern of behavior for securing schools. Now, it may look like there's a semblance of order and structure. Uvalde is a good example. Robb Elementary School, they have a resource officer. It's not the same as every resource officer. There's a certain amount of time every day that the school needs that officer present, and should not be pulled away for any reason. And if money's the reason why that officer had to be pulled off to do something else, it needs to get fixed for all schools. Systems to help support the property. The footprint of the school should be monitored further out from the front door than it already is. Do we do that? Is it done in a way that's effective so that kids feel comfortable and they feel like they're okay? Who is or are responsible for those systems and structures? And do we have the systems in place that we can secure the footprint of that property, that school, without making it feel like it's a prison? because that will cause the kids' educational process to be diminished. They will be concerned. Kids are sponges. They take in everything. And regretfully, fourth graders in Texas are now living with what they've taken in from a very traumatic experience. Who is responsible? All we have to do is listen to the words that come from the mouths of babes. They are one of the best indicators of what works. They are the stewards of their classrooms, if we allow them to be, if we give them the privilege to be, because they certainly have the courage. The young girl, the 10-year-old fourth grader who put blood on her face to mimic that she was injured, saved her life with that courage. That's a thinking process that we need to not only reward, but also continue to give it training so it can replicate that courage in other situations, and hopefully only replicate that courage in situations like a music recital, a play, a lacrosse match, a soccer game, in areas that the courage isn't being applied because the results of lack of courage could be a fatality. Let's have the courage be placed in different competitive environments that don't result in a death. We've got some really great kids, some really great potentials in the world around us. And it brings a thought to my mind about these three areas. Families are influential resources. The school itself is an influential resource. And I don't want to forget that the administrative bodies of the school, not just the physical plan, but the booster club, the school board, the faculty and staff within the schools, and then the kids, all of them are part of the processes in the school that need to be activated and connected and use one voice to secure their classrooms and their facilities, so that the kids have a free way to learn and to explain themselves openly and freely with a lot of courage when they go to the spelling bee, or they have a test, or they get on a competitive sports field, or musical concert, or drama, whatever they participate in, that their experience has not been diminished at all by a memory or a thought of violence. And the third component is the community, connecting those pieces within our community that then align with the school teachers' agenda for their curriculum, the learning objectives they want to have, and that is satisfying to the family, so that it's so coincidental that that morning of this fatal shooting was the awards that the kids received for their academic performance. That community knew who the kids were that were going to carry forward excellence into their 5th grade year and their 6th grade year and on from there. But many of them, that day ended for them. We need to be connected and identify who are responsible for carrying forward and protecting the voices of our babes. As I say these things and show you the different pieces, here's the picture of kids being pulled out of a window of the school in other classrooms that weren't compromised. And all of these sheriff and local police force personnel helping the kids. That image, that picture is not an escape plan. It is an escape, but it's not a plan. The building needs to have a secured method for rescuing these kids and breaching those classrooms that were compromised. It took them an hour. An hour. There was a lack of connection of the chief of police in Uvalde with those responders at the school. decisions weren't made in a timely fashion and kids lost their lives. So this picture, for those of you who are watching today, is kids running out of the building after they've been hoisted out of a window that police officers had opened up for kids to exit the building. That's not an escape plan. So this picture is a parent who's raising their arms. And I'm using it as though they're raising their arms to fit what I put below it. The phrase I put below it is stop the madness and killing. But the reality of this picture is it's a parent raising their arms, showing their child, here I am. Here is your dad, your grandpa, your uncle, your brother, whoever this figure is, welcoming the child that they saw who's been lifted out of the window and ushered across the parking lot and the field to this parent. But for me, it represents what we need to do going forward. We need to stop the madness, get over your desire for power and privilege, and make decisions that construct systems and methods that protect kids in their classrooms so they can learn without hesitation. And that we are connected from family to school to community seamlessly, so that we are taking control with courage, like the little girl, the 10-year-old who took control, who gave and exemplified courage that the adults need to wrap their brain around. It's enough already. Gun manufacturers are not liable for incidences like this. We need to put responsibility where it needs to land on those who can make decisions and be held accountable for those decisions. It's important for us to do that. So in line with what we do here at 360 Performance, we give you strategies, things you can walk away with that are going to help you manage tough situations, challenging situations, situations that in that challenge make you better. I don't like being challenged to be made better with circumstances like this. Regretfully, it happens though. So here's a school day check. You know this phrase, right? Stranger danger. Knowing who is not supposed to be here. I have been in the classrooms. I have walked the halls. I have welcomed kids to my classroom. I have welcomed kids to the building. I have helped them off the bus. I have helped them on the bus. And in all of those environments, kids, they see things and they know who the strangers are and whether they present a danger. But remind them. Make the connections for them. Stranger danger. Making sure that when they understand that the building is secure, that we have all the auxiliary doors locked at a certain time of day, that if somebody's in the hallway as you go to the bathroom with your hall pass and they don't look right, that's a stranger danger. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope the auxiliary doors being locked and the front door being monitored doesn't allow strangers in the building. Or the kids will know, as I've used to test this, I would wear, we used to have passes for the people that came in the building, and they're orange, and well, they're different colors for different schools, but the one school I remember it was an orange badge. And the kids all knew that. They see somebody walking down the hallway that they don't know, they have an orange badge on, no problem. No stranger danger. They passed go at the front office to get in the building. The building SRO is in the building. The resource officer is in the building. And the kids know who that is. Look, I've seen resource officers that are almost like a second family member because they know the kids so well. Do you realize that kids who go to school routinely and get a great education sometimes have better relationships with their teachers and coaches than they actually do with family members? Not that it's a bad thing, because your parents are still your parents. Your family's still your family. They come first. But because of the amount of time that you spend gaining a great education, becoming an athlete, a student athlete, you are hanging with some people for a lot of the day. And an SRO officer should be one of those people. You need to know who that is. One time I had a second grader who questioned me about the that day's resource officer, because it was a resource officer she hadn't seen before. And she asked me, you know, one of those pull on my trouser leg moments, because they're really short, I'm really tall. And they're questioning me about, hey, I saw the police, there's a police officer in the hallway. I've not seen them before. Is that right? Is that the right one? And I said, yes, it is. He's a substitute. And the obvious thing to them was our resource officer was a female. And that, you know, is funny at the moment. Maybe you had to be there. Teachers in the school building confirm the count of students. We have rosters, we have methods, we have strategies to confirm where are our kids when they show up in the building. Did they check in? And depending on the systems for taking account, nowadays it's not just the teacher who's going through their list, their roster, and taking attendance. Too often when kids come through, because of their badge, their ID badges they wear, they're recorded the minute they walk through the threshold of the school. Not every school can have that. Should every school have that? Maybe. Consistent standards that measure the quality and security of the environment. Lastly, but most importantly on the school day checklist, focus on learning. Once we get through all the other checklists, before the bell rings to start the day, we've gone through all those other checklists, butts are in seats, we are focused on learning. And there should be no obstacles to that focus. None. It's butts in chair, we've stopped the madness, and we are focused on what needs to happen, and that's learning. Can you tell I'm concerned about this? I hope you can tell that I've got a little bit of background in what needs to happen. And after I saw reports and film of what's gone on over the last 6 to 9 months, and most recently in the last 2 weeks, I thought it was appropriate to have today's show be part of that, because that's what we do here. We bring you information that's meaningful and cuts through the BS and gets down to really efficient and effective methods and strategies to help you be better. Now, this is a quote I brought up so often, and I don't feel bad about it being redundant at all, because it's one of the people that I respect, and he's no longer with us, but I respect his teachings and trainings about quality. His major event in his life was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That killed a lot of people. And Edward Deming was asked to come in to help the Army Corps of Engineers build back Japan. Our administration at the time took the steps, our leadership took the steps and said, you know what, we dropped a bomb on you, and it was bad. And it put an end, a major exclamation point in a lot of things. And we are remorseful for that, and we're coming to help build you back. And Edward Deming was one of those key consultants building strategy for the Army Corps of Engineers to do that. But he knew how to ask questions. And not just any questions, the right questions, because he went through and looked at who are the resource centers and what are the resource centers. Who's supposed to be responsible for this? What are we trying to take care of? What's our primary objectives and the goals within those objectives to get this done? Today we've gone over those. Kids, schools, and the community. Edward Deming said, you got to ask the right questions or you discover nothing. We've been discovering nothing because we've been letting certain individuals who we think are responsible hold us hostage, as Steve Kerr would say in his remarks prior to the final game of the semifinals, before they got to the finals. I agree with Steve Kerr. Stop the madness. Ask the right questions. Discover the right things. Because if you are not engaged to do that, you're going to keep us down on the same path. You're going to keep holding us hostage. Because our future success is influenced by the degree with which we are satisfied. I'm not satisfied. I hope most of us are not satisfied. Most importantly, I hope the leaders that can flick the switches within our legislative constructs to give us the guidelines that holds everybody accountable to the level of satisfaction we all want for the safety of our kids. Kids that don't have anything to combat what comes into their space and kills them without question, without remorse. This shooter was communicating internationally to people in Germany about what they were about to do, reveling in the fact they were going to shoot their grandmother in the face. That's not satisfying. We are not asking enough questions. We are not getting answers that discover what we need that is satisfactory to get us results that protect our kids and the future. This next picture I put up here, without hearing any voices of these parents that are sitting on the retention wall that outlines the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, these parents have questions. And I'm sure many of them have questions that are right questions, like, where's my kid? Who's taking care of my child and their safety? These parents who are waiting for updates about where their children are and how they are being handled and processed. It's a small community in Uvalde. There's going to be a lot of discussion going forward. I hope the discussion is about asking questions that discover answers that protects those children currently alive, future children who have yet to arrive in our world, and yet with this incident we gain insight as to what needs to happen to protect them. As every Friday comes around, I think about things to present to you about process, methods, strategies to improve your performance as an individual. But it's the collection of the individuals that makes up a team, that creates a community, that provides then resources through their behavior of performance that makes all of our lives better. Even if that performance is on a football field, a basketball court, a lacrosse field, in the snows of Rocky Mountains at Copper Mountain, watching future Olympians do their thing, and you gain something from that that helps your life improve. Or it's maybe in your community where your behavior and your actions help someone learn about how to strike a clay pot, read better, make something new. This morning, every Friday, I come away from yoga class at the Broomfield Community Center, which I'm just so grateful that it's there, and it does the wonderful things that it does. But it's also another way for me to tell you that when we share with you on Fridays, I've also experienced a lot of connections in our community. I hope you're feeling that same kind of connection in your community. If you need motivation or insights, check me out, 360 Performance, that's 360 Performance, on any podcast platform you might have out there. Spotify, we're on Spotify, Apple, Google, and many others. Check them out. Check us out. This show will be broadcast on that platform in a few days. I hope you'll check it out and listen to what I have to say. Not about the tragedy, that's so apparent, that's so graphic, but about the possibilities, about discovering answers through questions that we ask that are going to make our lives and the lives of our children better going forward. We do it every Friday. I hope you participate and get involved. It's not what you hear that's most important, it's what you take action on from what you hear. It's not just one thing, it's a combination of connections. I hope you make a connection every week. Every day of every week, so that when you do make those connections, you're making plans to take the actions necessary with what we've shared with you today to build on and make better. I think about days where it's just fun. It's productive. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying what's going on. I'm so excited about what the future brings. I had a chance over the Memorial Day holiday to hang out with my grandkids, in particular my grandsons who were playing baseball, going to the batting cage, wearing my arm out. I mean, every day I'm throwing to three of them and playing with them and showing them new things, smiles on faces. I had a chance to give my youngest grandson his first official, his only baseball mitt, not used by somebody else, because before that he was using a left-handed mitt for a right-handed thrower, and he's left-handed. But to see him pull that glove off and throw these left-handed, I'm going, oh my gosh, you just had a birthday. I had to go get him a glove. But his face when I gave him that glove just lit up. And my prediction is he'll be the better of the athletes of the crew, especially as far as baseball. He throws really well for an 8-year-old as a left-hander. He's a good kid. But we make plans and we take actions to see those smiles and enjoy the experiences we have with our family and friends. We do it here at KUHS, streaming to you every week, and then replicating that streaming effort through our podcast platforms on Spotify and Apple and Google. Check us out. Share with friends. Tell them about us and have them check out the podcast if they missed our live show. But today's live show is brought to you by 360 Performance. I'm Dr. Whiteman, wishing you the best for today. And if you're in Colorado, my gosh, got blue skies. Those crystal blue skies at Mile High and beyond in the mountains is just awesome. It's elevating. Oh, see what I did there? Okay. I'm glad to be with you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you. We're going to finish up a little early. I'm glad for that. But have some fun this weekend. Enjoy the summer. School is going to be out. And I hope for everybody all across the nation, we have no more incidences where kids are compromised and their learning processes are diminished because of the violent behavior of others. I hope you have a great day and you find ways to bring a smile to your face and others. Enjoy the day your way. Have a great day.